In 13.2, we are going to learn how to build the unit circle, but there are some things about angles that we have to talk about before we do that. So it's kind of long, so you may want to pause as we go along if you need to go back over something. But let's talk about an angle in standard position. An angle is in standard position when the vertex of the angle is at the origin and one side is on the positive x-axis. This is called the initial side. The other side of the angle, where the angle ends, is called the terminal side. So I'll show you that in a second. Since the axes on the coordinate plane intersect at the origin to form right angles, each quadrant represents 90 degrees. So when we start here, we always start at the positive x-axis. That represents 0 degrees. As we open in a counterclockwise direction, when we go up, that's 90 degrees. Another 90 is 180. Another 90 is 270, and when you finish the full circle, you've gone 360 degrees. And you can keep going around the circle as many times as you need to. It would just be adding 90 every quadrant. Now, angles that open in a counterclockwise direction have a positive measure, while angles that open in a clockwise direction will have a negative measure. So when you have positive and negative angles, the positive and negative is only telling you the direction. It's not telling you anything about the size of the angle. Another type of angle that we want to talk about is what's called coterminal angles. Coterminal angles are two angles that share a terminal side. Every angle has an infinite number of coterminal angles. So I've shown you an example here where you've got this angle in standard position of 100 degrees. This angle that's 100, notice it starts at the positive x-axis, it goes counterclockwise, it's 100. Well, if we went counterclockwise and we ended up at the same terminal side, that would be negative 260 degrees. Think about what 100 plus 260 is. That would be a full 360. It's negative though because it goes down in a clockwise direction. Now, what if we went all the way around the circle once and then went and ended back at the 100? Technically, what we've done is we've gone a full 360 plus 100 more, and so that would put you at 460. So those are coterminal angles. Now, what that does is it tells us a way that we can find coterminal angles, and the way that we do that is you can either add or subtract 360 as many times as you need to. That's why there's an infinite number of coterminal angles, and all of you could give me different coterminal angles and still be correct. So specifically, if I were to say to you, find one positive and one negative coterminal angle to each angle given, let's say I start you off with 120 degrees. To find a positive coterminal angle, I would need to add 360. That would put me at 480. To find a negative, I would need to take 120 and subtract 360. That would put me at negative 240. When I give you negative 45 degrees, again, to find a positive, you're going to add 360. That would put you at 315. Subtract 360. That would put you at negative 405. Now, on this last one, you're at negative 600. You could subtract 360 and get negative 960. That's fine. But I want you to think about how you're going to get the positive angle. When you add 360, you're only at negative 240, which means to find a positive angle, you've got to take negative 240 and add 360 to get 120. So we added the 360 twice on this one to get that positive measure, but in adding it, we still got a negative and a positive, which is what we were asked to find. So again, multiple answers are valid here. These are just some examples. Now, another type of angle that we want to talk about is what's called a reference angle. When the terminal side of an angle is in quadrant 1, then the reference is just the angle that's there. So if it's like 40 degrees, that's the angle. However, if you have the terminal side of an angle in quadrants 2, 3, or 4, then the reference angle is the measure between the terminal side and the x-axis. The unit circle will use angles of the special triangles and reference angles to those angles. Before we build the unit circle, though, we have to take the special triangles and put it together with trig ratios. So if you go back to your special triangles in the document from the day before, if I asked you to find sine, cosine, and tangent of 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 45 degrees, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So when you look at 30 degrees, you would see 1 is the opposite, 2 is the hypotenuse, so 1 over 2. And then that's how we would find all of these. And that's just using SOHCAHTOA and the trig and the special triangles. Now, let me talk about reference angles real quick. So the idea is this: if you have an angle that's like this, like 60 degrees, that is the angle. That's the reference angle, that's the angle. But here, notice that when you have 130 degrees, the difference between that and the x-axis, because this is a straight line, which would be 180, 180 minus 130 leaves us with 50 degrees right here. That's the reference angle, which means we could use 50 to find anything we need about 130. If we had 300, 300 would go up and around all the way into the fourth quadrant. But notice that if a full circle was 360, we're still 60 degrees short. So what completes the full circle? That would be the 60 degrees. So 60 degrees is your reference angle. So the reference angle always goes to the x-axis. If you'll go to this website here, if you go into the notes and click on it, you'll see some information about the unit circle. And then I want you to watch this video. It's listed in the email as well. And this is how we build the unit circle and what we can actually do with the unit circle. So you'll see in the video the different colors that I use. And if we were in the regular classroom, you'd have to memorize this and we'd take a quiz on it. And that's what you'll do in pre-cal next year. So you need to make sure you have a really good copy of it so that you can have that ready for next year. In your homework, you're doing what you see here. Make sure on number 50 you're doing parts A and B only.